Hi everybody. Hey, it's Emily here. So I've been teaching a little philosophy series here in IG Live, and I've been going through, if you haven't caught it, I've been going through the limbs of the Yoga Sutras, the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And I'm up to the 8th limb today. So from next week, I'll be moving on to a different philosophy theme. And I think I'm planning to talk about the koshas. So excited about that. But today I'm going to talk about the last limb of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So I'd love this to be as interactive as it can be. So if you're jumping on live, please feel free to ask any questions as we go along. As we get to the last limbs of yoga, it becomes kind of a little bit more enigmatic, a little bit more fluid, and I mean, even the first limbs we could have a conversation for hours about, but as we come towards the end, it can be very much open to your own interpretation. So the last limb of yoga in the Yoga Sutras is Samadhi, which is a word that gets paraded around as this kind of epitome of our yoga practice, this Samadhi, bliss state. And it's very important that in this map of the sutras that we see this as being a step-by-step process where we're always coming back to the steps before as well. So just as a bit of a recap, we've moved through the yamas, which are the kind of ethical, moral foundations, the niyamas. Maybe you might look at those as being like the qualities that we bring to our practice, also foundational qualities. And then through asana, so how we take our seat, how we might use our bodies. Pranayam, how we use our breath and control and expand our life force. Then we move into pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses. We're starting to move now into these more inward reflections of what we call samyama. So the first is dharana, which is the concentration techniques that we might use in meditation, concentration on our breath or concentration on a mantra. Into dhyana, which is where we move into this meditative state, where we become more one with that object of our meditation, where we start to sense this boundlessness of our bodies and of our minds, that we are not limited, that we are not separate from anything else, this state of dharana. So we kind of go, well, where do we go from there? What's the next step? If this, if dharana is this realization that we are all connected, that we are all one in unity consciousness or God or bliss or whatever you want to call it, love. I love calling it love. Samadhi is when this becomes our waking state. And so that might feel like quite a long way away for most of us. But samadhi is when the state of dharana, when we feel that connection, when we feel that sense of not being separate from anything else, non-dualism, not separate. That is when that is our life, when all of our actions and all of our wakefulness comes from that space. Some say that, even then we can be aware of our dreams. We can experience, communication with plants and there's all sorts of stories and experiences that people have had when they attain these real, awakened states of consciousness. So that's really what samadhi is when we are then living our life as an awakened being. And so I want to talk very briefly on this term of enlightenment, because samadhi, in Buddhist language, they call it nirvana. It's often equated to a state of enlightenment. And there is, some difficulties with that term, because it sort of implies that there's a sense of lightening ourselves of our bodies and of the material world. And in some, traditions of yoga and spiritual practice, this is actually the goal, is to transcend our bodies and to leave the body behind. The mind leaves the body behind and transcends to maybe another plane of consciousness or whatever it is. But in the traditions that I am steeped in and rooted in and that I share, which is in tantric yoga and Buddhism, that is not the goal. The goal is to reach this awakened state. And so the word the Buddha, which is often translated as enlightened one, actually means awakened one. When we achieve an awakened state of consciousness, then the goal is then to live that in the world, to live in an awakened way, so that we might let that ripple out into everyone that we meet and everything that we do. So the goal becomes not about our own self-transcendence, transcending the self, but it's still being a very individual thing that we're doing. Not although we're realizing that we're not separate, there's still this sense of it being our personal journey into this enlightened state. So flipping that, it's more about, once we realize that we're at one with everything and that we're connected to everything, we actually can't do anything but want to serve the awakening of the whole community, the whole of humanity, and everything. Because once we realize that we're not separate, and once we can realize that in every daily moment of our lives, then we don't want to enlighten ourselves separate from anybody else. And so I want to talk very briefly about the Bodhisattva vow before I'm going to offer you a little mantra to finish. So we're going to offer to chant a little mantra at the end. So the Bodhisattva vow, which is a Buddhist concept, is this idea that, and Dalai Lama talks about this a lot, so it's very strong in Tibetan Buddhism, that the Bodhisattva vow means that you as a Bodhisattva, with somebody who is on the path of awakening, so Bodhisattva means on the path of awakening, that you take a vow that you will forgo this sense of enlightenment, of transcending the self, and forgo even your own kind of, well-being or wealth or, personal wealth, in order to work towards the awakening of all beings. And so the Buddha, when he sat underneath the Bodhi tree, and he, put his hand on the ground, and regardless of what was happening, whatever challenges were being thrown at him, he sat under the Bodhi tree and he vowed to awaken. And when he reached that state of awakening, he didn't leave his body. He came back into his body and went out to teach meditation, because his vow was that he wanted to help everybody to awaken. Not that you can force anyone to wake up, but you can dedicate your life to that path of assisting in whatever way, serving in whatever way you can, individually, uniquely, in your own purpose, your own dharma, to serve the awakening of all. And so this Bodhisattva vow is that you will continue to come back. And so if you someone that subscribes to this idea of reincarnation and the cycles of life, it would mean that you continue to come back into a body, into a human body on the earth, to serve awakening of all. So it's a really quite a beautiful thing in a way, to take a Bodhisattva vow. It's a very very powerful thing to do. So the coming kind of back full circle, because it's always a cycle, it's always a circle. The first concept that we talk about in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is the concept, the yama ahimsa. Ahimsa is kindness and non-harming, and living our lives from a place of kindness and love. And when we get to the very end of the limbs, the sutras, we get to this state of samadhi where we're living our life from an understanding and a knowledge that we are not separate from anybody else. So we cannot possibly live our lives without living it from a place of love, because we're not separate. And so often Patanjali's sutras will be not in a line going up, they'll be drawn as a flower with petals. So it's a circle. So for me, what's really important is to always come back to one of my favourite mantras, which I chant at the end of every class I teach, which is Lokah Samastah Sukhinoh Bhavantu. And this is a Vedic mantra, yoga mantra, which means may all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may my thoughts, my words and my actions contribute in some way to the happiness and freedom of all beings. And so that is the guidepost that we start with the concept of Ahimsa, and it's also what we come to at the end with the state of Samadhi and this understanding that we're not separate. So Lokah Samastah Sukhinoh Bhavantu. So I invite you to chant 3 rounds with me. And it goes, I'll sing it through once, and then we'll sing it together 3 times. We'll start with an Om. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. May my thoughts, words and actions contribute to the happiness and freedom of all beings. Have a beautiful day. Hope you've enjoyed this little philosophy series. I've definitely enjoyed sharing it. So I will hopefully see you next week. I'll post when I'll be doing the first one. And as I said, I'm gonna continue with the next map of philosophy or of the body of the koshas. So hope to see you then. Bye.